You know that feeling when you wake up middle of the night, maybe around 3 a.m., and your mind just flips on.
Oh, yeah. It's surprisingly common.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is this just, your sleep cycle doing its thing, or could there be something more? So today on the deep dive, we're actually exploring that very question for you.
And what's really fascinating is how this modern experience might link up with some very ancient wisdom.
Exactly. We're taking a deep dive into Brahma Muhurat, a concept, a time period that's traditionally held huge significance.
Right.
And to help us unpack this, we're looking at insights from Dinesh Ji of Speaking Tree from one of their YouTube video transcripts. We're really focusing on what he talks about as the power and importance of this early morning time.
And if you sort of look at the bigger picture, it's not just about, waking up early is good for you. Yeah. It gets into our energy, mental clarity.
Right.
Even this connection to what he calls a subtle world.
Yeah, and for those of you listening who maybe find yourselves waking up around 3 a.m. again and again, Dinesh Ji has some interesting thoughts on that too, and also about dreams during this specific time.
Definitely.
So think of this as your maybe shortcut to understanding what Brahma Muhurat might mean without digging through the whole video or pulling at the core ideas, trying to explore the why behind it all.
And Dinesh Ji, just for context, he's seen as a guide in spiritual practices, drawing from really deep sources like the Upanishads, Patanjali Yoga.
Ancient Indian wisdom, foundational stuff on consciousness, well-being.
Yeah.
So let's get started. What exactly is Brahma Muhurat, like the definition?
Well, traditionally it's defined as about 96 minutes before sunrise.
96 minutes, okay. So if sunrise is, say, 6 a.m.
Then you're looking at around 4:30 a.m., give or take.
Okay, 4:30 a.m., that's a clear time frame. But Dinesh Ji also offers a slightly different take, right? Especially for spiritual seekers.
Yes, and this is quite interesting. For people actively doing sadhana, spiritual practices, he suggests that the time after 2:30 a.m. can be seen as pretty much equivalent for practice.
Ah, so it's not necessarily this super rigid window starting exactly at 4:30, more flexible.
A bit more flexible for that specific purpose, yeah.
Yeah, and the Speaking Tree channel itself, they have a specific time they start.
They do. They mentioned starting their Brahma Muhurat meditation right at 3:58 a.m.
3:58. Specific.
It is. It just shows how, different groups might interpret it and apply it.
Okay, so that's the what. Now let's get into the why. Why is this Brahma Muhurat period considered so, special in these traditions?
There are a few key layers to this. First, energy.
Energy.
Yeah. The idea is that your body's energy is most available to your brain then, mostly because digestion is usually done.
Okay. That makes sense physiologically, right?
Yeah.
Your body isn't busy processing last night's dinner.
Exactly. Frees up resources for the mind.
Okay. What else?
Second, the mental state, when you're just coming out of deep sleep.
Yeah.
Well, and this is a big if you don't immediately grab your phone. Yeah. Well, the mind tends to be calmer then, more stable, fewer conscious thoughts just bouncing around.
Right, before the day's noise kicks in. You can see how that would be valuable. And it's not just internal stuff, is it? The outside world matters, too.
Oh, absolutely. The quiet of nature at that hour, hardly any traffic, less noise pollution.
It's like the world pauses.
It really does. And that naturally helps foster that inner peace, that stillness.
Okay. And Dinesh Ji also brought up something about a subtle realm. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is fascinating. He talks about the thought realm, the Vichar-Mandal. The idea is it has its own kind of atmosphere.
Like an atmosphere for thoughts?
Sort of, yeah. And during Brahma Muhurat, that thought atmosphere is believed to be clearer, more stable, like the physical air on a really still morning.
So it makes it easier to do inner work?
That's the idea. Particularly conducive for those inner-focused spiritual practices.
So your inner state and the outer environment, and even the subtle thought environment, are all kind of aligned.
Exactly. And there's also this underlying connection, maybe, to the law of attraction idea.
How so?
The belief is that the thoughts and feelings you hold during this potent time, they attract similar vibrations from the universe, potentially leading to, deeper experiences.
Okay, interesting. Let's shift gears slightly. Dinesh Ji mentioned this thing about waking up repeatedly around 3 a.m., which, as we said, is pretty common.
It really is.
So is it just a sleep pattern quirk, or could there be something deeper going on there, according to him?
Well, his suggestion is, assuming it's not, a physical health thing causing it.
Right, rule that out first.
Absolutely. But if not, it could be. Like echoes. imprints of past life memories may be surfacing, seeking some kind of recognition.
Wow, okay. That's definitely a thought-provoking perspective for people. So if someone experiences this, what does he suggest they do? Just lie there?
No, not exactly. He offers a very simple practice. When you wake up, just sit on the edge of your bed,
Okay.
eyes closed, and just try to be in a thoughtless state, quiet,
Yeah.
for maybe 10, 15 minutes.
That sounds surprisingly simple, accessible.
It is. And the idea isn't complex.
What's the thinking behind it?
He suggests that doing this regularly, day after day, can actually lead to greater self-awareness. And you might start noticing positive changes. He even uses the word magic.
Magic! Oh!
But the key point is no external guru needed, no complicated technique. It's just about being available to yourself.
Available to yourself. I like that. And he contrasts that with, well, what most of us do, right?
Right. Immediately reaching for the phone, getting sucked into the digital vortex.
Yeah.
He sort of hints that these awakenings could be the universe or your deeper self trying to talk to you. And Brahma Muhurat is this prime time for potential connection.
But that raises a huge question, doesn't it?
Luke is.
How do you know if it's real intuition or that universe talking versus just your own brain chatter, the usual mental noise?
Yes, the million-dollar question, discerning the signal from the noise.
Exactly. How do you tune in properly?
Well, to help with exactly that, Dinesh Ji talks about an exercise he actually developed maybe 25 years ago. It's called Atma Sanket.
Atma Sanket. Okay, what does that mean?
It translates roughly to self-signaling, or signals from the self.
Self-signaling. Okay, intriguing. Tell us about this practice. How does it work? You might find this useful.
So back then, he had participants use notebooks. He specifically mentions those old-style red accounting ledgers, which is kind of charming.
Ah, yeah, very specific.
And the task was to sit quietly in the morning during that time of self-availability, but without labeling it sadhana or anything formal.
Just quiet time.
Just quiet time. And they were told to just write down whatever thoughts, feelings, images, whatever came to mind.
Even if it didn't make sense.
Even if it seemed unclear, fragmented, weird, just jot it down.
Okay.
And crucially, don't reread it right away.
Don't reread it. Why not?
To avoid that immediate analysis, the judging mind jumping in, let it sit.
Okay, so you write it down, put it away, then what?
Then, after about 8 weeks or so, they were asked to go back and read through their notes.
8 weeks later. And what typically happened? What did people find?
He says people were often genuinely surprised. They found profound insights, ideas, perspectives written down that felt almost like they came from beyond their normal conscious thinking.
Like tapping into something deeper.
Exactly. It's kind of amazing. This pre-digital practice really anticipates a lot of modern journaling or mindfulness techniques, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The timeless need to just listen to ourselves.
It really does. So it's a way for you, potentially, to access a deeper layer of your own knowing. And this practice, he says, can lead to swaguru bode. Let's unpack that term.
Yes, swaguru bode. It basically means realizing your own inner teacher, your own inner wisdom.
Becoming your own guru, in a sense.
In a sense, yes. Like finding that internal compass, that guidance system we all kind of have, but often ignore because we're looking outside ourselves.
That's powerful. Finding the answers within, that's something for you to really think about. He also warns against sharing these insights too quickly, doesn't he?
He does. He emphasizes keeping these personal insights, well, personal, at least initially. Don't share them with people who might not get it or might just dismiss it.
Protect that fragile insight.
Right. Use a private diary, or he even says, secure note on your phone works fine these days. Keep those self-signals safe.
So it's a personal journey. Cultivating that inner voice, which he suggests can bring real meaning and direction to your life. Help you feel less aimless.
Precisely.
Okay. Now, what about dreams? There's this popular idea, isn't there, that dreams during Brahma Muhurat are special. Maybe intuitive, maybe they come true. What's his take on that for you?
He definitely acknowledges that popular belief that these dreams are often felt to be intuitive, sometimes even, prophetic.
But I sense a but coming.
Yes, there's a caution. He suggests this is probably more likely for true spiritual seekers, for sadhaks, people whose minds are already generally less cluttered.
Okay, that makes sense. If your mind's quieter to begin with, maybe you can receive or interpret those dream messages more clearly. What about the rest of us? The average person with a busy mind?
Well, for someone with maybe restless sleep, mindful of the day's worries, scattered thoughts.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Dreams during that time might just be reflections of all that mental static.
Yeah.
Makes it much harder to pick out anything truly significant.
So a vivid dream at 4 a.m. isn't automatically a message from the beyond. Got it. But he does mention something about the conscious mind being less active.
Yes, he points out that typically in those early hours, the conscious mind's grip is looser. It's less active.
Okay.
And that could potentially allow greater access to the unconscious, the subconscious, which in turn might lead to more insightful dreams for you.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Interesting possibility. Okay, so for those listening who are intrigued by all this, maybe want to dip their toes in, what practical advice does Dinesh Ji offer? Even if you don't see yourself as like a hardcore spiritual person.
He really grounds it in two fundamental principles first. He calls them pavitrata and anushasan.
Okay, let's break those down for you listening. Pavitrata, that's purity, right? But what does that actually mean here? Not being perfect, surely.
No, not perfect. He explains it more as the ongoing effort to catch negative thoughts, to notice them and try not to just indulge them or get swept away.
Yeah.
Recognizing, that complete purity is a journey, a struggle maybe.
So it's about awareness, catching yourself, not feeding the negativity, aiming for a cleaner mental space. Okay, and anushasan, discipline.
Exactly, discipline.
Fire.
Especially around sleep. Prioritizing going to bed on time, waking up consistently, having a strong intention, a commitment to it that you don't easily break just because, you feel like it, unless there's a real reason.
Establishing that rhythm, that foundation. Makes sense. Okay, so with that foundation, what are the practical steps for a beginner wanting to explore Brahma Muhurat time?
He really emphasizes simplicity. For someone just starting, the absolute best practice is maybe the simplest. Just sit quietly with yourself.
That's it. No chanting, no complex postures.
Not necessarily, especially at first. If you want to add something, he suggests maybe gently slowing down your breathing just for 15 minutes or so.
15 minutes? That feels doable.
Right, manageable. And the focus is just observing the breath, not forcing it, not trying to achieve anything spectacular.
Just mindful awareness of the breath. But what about the thoughts? My mind will go crazy.
Oh, absolutely. He totally acknowledges that. Your conscious mind will interfere. It'll chatter.
So what do you do? Fight it.
Well, that's the key. Yeah. Don't fight it. Just observe the thoughts. Notice them without getting lost in them. Try to recognize the difference between that habitual, noisy mind and the part of you that's just watching.
The observer self.
Exactly. And acceptance is crucial. Except the mind will wander. Don't get frustrated. Just gently bring your attention back.
Sounds very much like standard mindfulness instruction, actually, which many of you might have heard before. And minimizing distractions, that's got to be key too, right?
Oh, for sure. If you possibly can, put the phone on airplane mode. Avoid those pings and notifications pulling you out of it.
Good tip.
He uses this lovely phrase. He calls your body a laboratory for consciousness.
A laboratory for consciousness. I like that.
Yeah. And it needs your full presence, your full availability for that inner exploration to happen.
That really reframes how you think about just sitting quietly, doesn't it? It's active exploration.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we start to wrap things up here, let's look at the bigger picture for you listening. What's the payoff? What does Dinesh Ji suggest you can ultimately gain from doing these kinds of practices? What's the reward?
Well, he starts by posing a question, really. He asks you to consider, do your current achievements, your possessions, your status, do they bring true, lasting contentment? Real peace, stability, joy?
Oof, that's a hard question for many people.
It is. Because he points out that inner chaos, so many experience the restless mind, anxiety, fear, often exist despite all the external success.
That gap, yeah, I think that resonates with a lot of listeners. That feeling of having things, but not feeling settled inside.
Exactly. So he suggests the primary benefit, the real fruit of spiritual practice, is learning what he calls Sanandog.
Sanandog.
Which means roughly joyful and creative engagement with life, with your possessions, as opposed to just consuming things driven by ego or identity.
So it's not about rejecting the world or possessions.
Not at all. It's about how you engage with them. Shifting from maybe mindless accumulation or use to a more conscious, appreciative, even creative interaction with your life. Yeah. It actually aligns nicely with modern ideas about mindful consumption, doesn't it?
It does. Experiencing life more fully, more joyfully, rather than just having more stuff.
Yeah. And this shift, he says, leads directly to more stability, more peace, better productivity even, and just a higher quality of life overall for you.
Makes sense. And he also talks about siddhi, right? These spiritual attainments or powers. How does he frame that? Because often you hear about, levitation or things like that.
Yeah, he really reframes that whole idea. He says the greatest siddhi, the most valuable attainment, is the transformation of your own nature, your character.
The interchange.
The interchange. That's the real power. Because that changes how you interact with everything, challenges, opportunities, people. He argues that this internal shift is way more significant than some flashy external miracle that doesn't actually change who you are at your core.
So the real magic maybe is becoming a calmer, more stable, more aware person.
Precisely. And he gives a very down-to-earth example for you too.
Oh, yeah.
He says even just achieving consistently restful sleep through these kinds of mindful practices, that is a siddhi. That's a form of self-mastery.
I love that, making it really practical and accessible. Okay, so just to quickly recap for everyone listening, we've talked about Brahma Muhurat, this potentially special early morning time. We've explored the idea of quiet self-reflection, maybe using that Atma Sanket practice to tune into your inner signals. And we've landed on this idea that the real goal isn't necessarily mystical powers, but that deep internal transformation within you.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, how these seemingly quite simple practices, sitting quietly, observing your breath, jotting down thoughts, can potentially lead to such profound shifts in how you experience your life.
It really is. So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over. What if you just experimented, woke up maybe 10, 15 minutes earlier tomorrow, found a quiet spot, sat down, and just listened? No agenda, no judgment. What subtle messages might your own being, your own inner wisdom be trying to share in that stillness? This deep dive, it's really just scratching the surface for you. There's so much more to explore in mindfulness, meditation, self-awareness, if you're interested.
Absolutely, it's a huge field.
But maybe remember this. Sometimes the most profound journeys, the biggest discoveries, they start with just a quiet moment, a willingness to turn inward and simply be available to yourself.